All right, let's dive in. Today we're taking a trip somewhere different. A place we all carry around inside us, but rarely ever visit. The deep, weird, and wonderful landscape of our own subconscious. So before we really get going and meet the locals down there, I want you to just think about this for a second. Seriously, what's echoing around in the quiet, unseen parts of your mind? What kind of voices? What fears? What strange ideas are bouncing off the walls in the deep? And there's our first voice. This is the skeleton, and it's kind of going to be our guide for this whole thing. And right away, notice how it talks about itself. Not as a person, but as a feeling. A lost soul just floating in a sea of subconscious anxiety. That one line pretty much sets the entire mood for our journey. And with that feeling, that sense of being completely and utterly adrift, we're in. This is it. The skeleton's aimless wandering is our official entrance into this hidden world. This subconscious underground, it's not really a place for big, scary nightmares with monsters jumping out at you. It's quieter than that. It's a world built on a foundation of existential dread, where this feeling of ennui, this sort of tired, heavy boredom, is way, way more powerful than outright panic. Purpose is a joke down here. The only real goal is just to keep going. This right here, this is basically the skeleton's entire worldview in a nutshell. It wanders around because, hey, what's the point of having a destination if it all feels random anyway? It's convinced life is just nonsense. And this is the really crucial part. It hides. It stays hidden to avoid thinking too hard about any of it. It's a survival strategy, really, built on just pure avoidance. But, just ignoring things isn't the only game in town down here. As we go deeper, we're going to move from that sort of passive anxiety to the active things, the things we ourselves create and then shove down into the darkness. And these aren't just feelings anymore. These are actual entities that we've built. And the first creature we run into is this guy, the golem. Now, this isn't some external monster that broke in, no way. This is something that comes from inside of us, born out of our own actions, our own good intentions even. Just listen to how the golem describes itself. It's what we keep buried. It represents all those solutions we come up with that end up becoming their own new festering problems. We know they're there, we can feel them rumbling around, but we make a conscious choice to keep them locked up. And this just lays out the whole ironic process so perfectly. Think about it. You've got a problem, so you try to fix it. But then your solution, the very thing you created to help, it just takes on a life of its own. It escapes your control and becomes a whole new monster. It's a brilliant metaphor for how our attempts to create order can totally backfire, creating this unintended chaos that we then have to bury deep inside. Okay, so we've got this background hum of anxiety, and we've got these problems we create and then bury. But that brings up a really big question. Who exactly is the we that's doing all this burying? This next part, well, it challenges the whole idea of a solid singular self. And here's another voice for you. Let's call it Skeleton 2. And it gets right to the heart of it. It's basically saying that yourself isn't some fixed, stable thing. It's dynamic. It's always changing. So the person you think you are, right this very second, that might just be a temporary illusion you've put together for the moment. So here's the absolute kicker. From the perspective of your subconscious, your identity, that feeling of I, it's really just a defense mechanism. We tell ourselves this coherent story of who we are because the alternative, the idea that we're actually fluid and chaotic and totally inconsistent, well, that's terrifying, isn't it? Our identity is just a futile attempt to escape that fear. And to make this idea a little more solid, let's meet another one of the locals down here, the Scarecrow. And it is the perfect, and I mean perfect, symbol of a fragmented, borrowed identity. The Scarecrow just completely dismisses the whole concept of an I. It sees itself as nothing more than a medley, a combination of borrowed parts from other places. From this point of view, there's no real core self. It's just a patchwork of outside influences stitched together. And this slide just lays it all out in stark contrast, doesn't it? Over on the left, you've got the nice, comfortable story we tell ourselves every day. We're unified, we're stable, we have free will, we're real. But the subconscious, the underground, it whispers a completely different story, that we're just a medley, that our will is an illusion, and our whole sense of self is just a way to run from fear. So, if the self is in illusion, what does that say about the world that the self sees? Our final descent here questions the very foundation of reality itself and whether we can trust our perception of it at all. And our guide for this last part of the trip is
The Hell Beast. Now, I know, the name sounds pretty terrifying, but its purpose isn't really to scare us. It's here to make us question the most basic thing we have, our senses.
And its first question is a real heavy hitter. We just assume that what we see, what we hear, what we feel, that's reality. But the Hell Beast is asking, are you sure about that? What if there's a huge gap between the world as it actually is and the world as you experience it? And this second question just digs that hole a little deeper. It suggests that our internal state, our fears, our anxieties, all that stuff, is actively painting the world we see. So the monstrous look of the Hellbeast, maybe that isn't its true form at all. Maybe it's just a reflection of our own internal stuff. And this, right here, this is the core idea. We love to think of our senses as this crystal clear window we look through to see the world. But this perspective says, nope. They're much more like a paintbrush. They don't just show us reality, they actively interpret it, they construct it, they paint a picture based on our internal chemical variables and sheer randomness. Which brings us to our final encounter, and the most unsettling, mind-bending proposition of this entire journey. An otherworldly creature, an alien, shows up to offer us a choice. And this is the question the alien drops on us. What if this whole dark, twisted subconscious exists underneath a surface life that's also a complete fantasy? What if your wonderful conscious life, the one you think is so real, is just an elaborate story you're telling yourself because the actual truth of reality is simply unbearable? So here it is, the choice laid bare. Option A, you can stay in the idyll, that comfortable fantasy you call your life. Or option B, you can take a risk. You can open your eyes, just for 1 second, and see what's really there, even if it's completely and utterly unbearable. And that's where we're left, with that question. It isn't a threat, it's a genuine question. Even knowing that reality might be horrific, isn't there a tiny part of you that's just curious? Wouldn't you want to see, just for a moment, what's actually real? The choice, it would seem, is all yours.